The church bell tolled slow and heavy, each strike swallowed by the hush of the town. Clara McGraw stood at the altar, veil trembling, her lips moving though no sound came. The vows were written for her, pressed in her hands that morning, and now they scattered from her memory like dust on the wind. Her fingers clutched the lace of her dress, knuckles white. She blinked hard, but the tears spilled anyway, streaking her cheeks in full view of the townfolk crowded inside the little clapboard church. Some looked away, ashamed to watch. Others whispered behind their palms, eyes sliding toward the man beside her. Nathaniel Boone smiled, not the smile of a groom, but of a cattle baron who had won another piece of land. His black coat shone slick under the candlelight, his hand resting heavy on hers, pressing down until she stilled her trembling. "Say the words," the preacher urged softly. Clara's throat burned. She tried again, but only a sob came. It echoed sharp against the rafters. Boone's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing, but he did not release her hand. From the back pew, boots creaked against the wood floor. A lone cowboy leaned forward, brim pulled low, shadow cutting his face in two. He said nothing, only watched. The preacher cleared his throat, rushing the vows, his voice shaking. Clara swayed, the weight of Boone's grip holding her upright. Her tears fell faster, soaking the lace at her breast. Boone's fingers curled tighter. His whisper was hot with threat. "Finish it." The silence thickened. Dust motes swam in the candlelight. Outside, a wind pressed against the shutters, making them groan. And then it came. A voice, low and rough, close enough for Clara alone to hear. "I'll make you laugh someday." She startled. Her head turned slightly, veil brushing her cheek, searching the pews. The cowboy's eyes caught hers, steady and calm as the desert horizon. His lips had barely moved, but the words struck deep, louder than the preacher's chant, louder than Boone's command. Her breath caught. The tears did not stop, but something shifted behind them, a tremor of defiance, a flicker of light where grief had settled. The preacher spoke the final words. Boone answered with clipped pride. Clara's reply came broken, each word torn from her throat like cloth ripped at the seams. The ring slid onto her finger. Applause rose, weak and scattered. Some townsfolk clapped out of duty, others did not dare. Boone raised her hand high, triumphant. She hung limp at his side, veil damp, lips pressed tight. But her eyes strayed once more to the cowboy in the shadows. He had already leaned back, hat brim low again. Yet she swore she saw the ghost of a smile curve his mouth, small and certain, as if the story had only just begun. The sun bled across the horizon, red spilling over the canyons. Heat shimmered off the rocks, and the cry of a lone hawk cut the silence. Clara's ranch lay quiet, but the quiet was wrong. Fences sagged, rails splintered, and the corral stood open where cattle had once been. She knelt by the broken posts, fingers brushing the wood. Fresh tracks pressed into the dust, hoof prints too many to be strays. Her breath caught. Boone's men had been here. A crunch of boots behind her. She spun, dress catching on the dry weeds. The cowboy stepped from the shadows of the barn, one hand lifting slow in peace. His hat brim hid his eyes, but the dust on his coat spoke of long miles. "Fence won't hold," he said, voice low as gravel. Her jaw tightened. "You think I don't see that?" He crouched, testing the rail with a steady hand, then reached for the hammer lying in the dirt. Without asking, he began driving nails back into the wood. Each strike echoed sharp against the canyon walls. Clara stood still, watching the rhythm of his arm, the quiet certainty in his work. From the ridge, laughter drifted down. Two of Boone's riders, their silhouettes sharp against the fading sun. They watched, spitting tobacco into the dirt, before turning their horses back toward town. Clara's stomach knotted. The message was plain. She was not left alone. The cowboy set the hammer down, his glance following the riders until they disappeared. He wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. "Boone won't stop," she whispered. "No," he answered. Her throat tightened. "Then why stand here?" He leaned against the rail, eyes hidden in shadow. "A man owes a debt." The words hung heavy, but he gave no more. That night, The saloon filled with murmurs. Glasses clinked. The piano stumbled through a song no one was listening to. Old-timers bent close, whispering about the stranger. Some swore they'd seen him before, years ago, on a street lined with bodies. They called him a name, spoken like a secret carried by the wind. The Smile Maker. Folks said he'd grin only after a duel, the grin that broke a man's nerve before the bullet struck. Then he vanished, leaving behind nothing but a legend. Clara sat alone in the corner, hands folded tight in her lap, listening. Boone's men lounged by the bar, their laughter sharp as broken glass, their eyes cutting toward her, and then the cowboy by the door. He stood silent, untouched drink in hand, watching the room like a wolf watches the tree lean. The piano faltered, silence spilling in its place. Boone's name was spoken, his plans whispered, cattle, land, power stretched farther than the town could hold. And the widow's ranch lay at the center of it all. Clara's tears had not dried since the vows, but now something else stirred beneath them. A spark, faint but alive, as the cowboy shadow stretched long across the saloon floor. The lanterns guttered in the wind, throwing long shadows across Clara's porch. Hoofbeats thudded out of the dark, heavy and deliberate. She froze at the doorway, breath shallow, eyes catching the glint of rifles in the torchlight. Boone's riders circled like wolves, their laughter sharp against the night. "Come out, widow," one called, voice dripping with mockery. "Time you learned your place." The boards beneath her feet creaked as she stepped forward. Her hands shook, but she stood tall, veil of hair falling loose against her face. Behind her, the cattle stirred restless, sensing the threat. Then a shadow moved from the barn. The cowboy stepped into the torchlight, coat flaring in the wind, revolvers already loose at his sides. The riders shifted in their saddles, grins faltering. "Evening, boys." His voice came low, calm as still water. The first shot cracked, splitting the silence. Clara flinched, ears ringing. Sparks leapt from the iron rail where the bullet struck. Before the smoke cleared, the cowboy's gun spoke once, twice, quick as breath. 2 horses reared, their riders thrown screaming into the dirt. Chaos erupted. Hooves pounded, guns roared, muzzle flashes tearing holes in the dark. The cowboy moved with deadly precision, each step measured, each shot finding its mark. Clara pressed against the doorway, heart hammering, watching the night fill with smoke and fire. One rider lunged toward her, face twisted with fury. She stumbled back, then the cowboy's hand closed on the man's collar, yanking him down. A strike swift and brutal dropped him cold. The cowboy's eyes, hard and sharp, met hers for only an instant before he turned back to the fight. The last of Boone's men spurred away, hooves fading into the canyon. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the groans of the wounded in the dust. The smell of powder hung thick, bitter on the tongue. The cowboy holstered his guns, shoulders rising and falling with steady breath. He looked not at Clara, but at the ground, as though haunted by the echoes of each shot. "You," she whispered, words trembling. "You've done this before." He said nothing, but in town, the story spread like wildfire. Around the saloon fire, men leaned close, voices hushed as they spoke his name again. The Smile Maker, a gunfighter who once unnerved killers with nothing but the promise of his grin. A man who disappeared after blood painted the streets, leaving only legend behind. By morning, Boone's fury reached every corner. He strode down the main road, voice carrying, daring the stranger to face him under the sun. A duel, high noon. No hiding, no mercy. Clara's eyes burned with fear as she gripped the cowboy's arm. "Don't," she begged. "Don't let him drag you back into it." His gaze softened for her alone. "Some promises," he said, voice quiet as smoke, "need a little gunfire to be kept." The street lay empty but for the dust. Doors barred, shutters drawn, children peering from cracks in the wood. The sun burned high and merciless, throwing long shadows across the main road. At its center, Boone stood tall, coat flapping in the dry wind, hand resting on the butt of his pistol. The cowboy walked slow from the far end, each step raising a puff of grit. His hat brim shaded his eyes, face unreadable. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. "Thought you'd run." Boone sneered, voice sharp in the silence. "Like you did before." No answer. The cowboy stopped 10 paces away, boots planted, hands loose by his sides. The town clock struck once, the sound rolling through the air like thunder. Boone's lip curled. "You ain't walking away this time." His hand twitched, too fast for the eye, metal flashed. But the cowboy's draw was faster, a blur of motion smooth as water over stone. A single shot cracked, and Boone's pistol flew from his hand, clattering useless into the dust. Gasps rose from hidden windows. Boone staggered, clutching his wrist, eyes wide with shock. The cowboy held steady, revolver aimed true, smoke curling from the barrel. Boone spat, voice breaking. "Kill me then. Finish it." The cowboy's gaze narrowed, but his finger eased from the trigger. He spun the revolver once, holstered it with finality. "You're not worth a bullet." The words cut sharper than any shot. Boone fell to his knees, clutching his ruined pride as much as his hand. Silence reigned. Then the townsfolk stepped out, one by one, eyes fixed on the man in the street. Fear gave way to awe. The legend was no longer whispers. It stood before them in dust and shadow. Clara moved from the church steps, breath trembling, veil pushed back. She crossed the street slow, each step echoing in the hush. Boone lay broken at her feet, but her eyes never left the cowboy. He turned to her, and for the first time, his mouth curved. Not cruel, not haunted, but true. A smile, small yet certain, the kind that softened stone and lifted the weight from her heart. Her breath caught. Then, against the sun and the dust and the memory of her tears, she laughed. It broke from her sudden and unguarded, a sound the town had not heard since her husband's passing. The cowboy tipped his hat, the smile fading into something quieter, almost sorrowful. Without another word, he turned and walked down the road, his figure shrinking against the blaze of the desert horizon. An old voice carried the memory long after. And they say that day, when Boone's shadow fell and the widow's laughter rose, the smile-maker kept his promise. Some call it justice, some call it mercy, but all agree it was the making of a legend.